To give ourselves the cue to get into the mood. Greetings and welcome to the Talk with History podcast. I am your host, Scott, here with my wife and historian, Jen.
Hello.
On this podcast, we talk about history's continuing impact on us and our personal journey through YouTube as we continue to explore, record, and share our history walks with you. Before we get into our main topic, I want to briefly ask for a review from our listeners. Apple Podcast reviews can get you on a future episode with a five-star shout-out. And if you do not have an Apple device, you can reach out to us and ask us questions over on Twitter at Talk with History or through our website, talkwithhistory.com. Also, don't forget to check out our other podcast, The History Buzz. It's a little more relaxed, where we sit down and interview folks while chatting about history over a couple of drinks, and we just let the conversation wander where it may. It's a lot of fun. If you love 80s movies, music, and the fashion that came with it all, I think you're going to love today's topic. Jen, she's a Pittsburgh native and loves all of those things I just mentioned. So it's a natural fit that we're going to talk about one of the biggest movies of 1983. Now, Jen, what is the movie we're talking about today?
Flashdance.
Flashdance. And why are we talking about Flashdance?
Well, Flashdance had a huge impact on me as a young girl, especially growing up in the 80s. So much so that when I had an answering machine, when people still had those,
right,
and you could make your own recording, part of it was that song, Just a Steel Town Girl on a Saturday night looking for the time of her life. That was on my answering machine.
Yep.
Because it was so fitting for a Pittsburgh girl and having fun.
Because the movie Flashdance, it takes place in Pittsburgh.
It takes place in Pittsburgh. And it's really great in the 80s with the steel industry. I mean, she's a welder. It just fits in with everything that's...
It's like the classic 80s movie. Yeah. It's got good music. It's so great.
And blue collar.
Yeah.
Right? So we go, in the video, we go to a lot of those filming locations. And for me, that was a dream come true.
Yeah, that was super cool. We try to recreate some of the shots.
We tried to recreate some of the shots, like her biking to work, across the bridge, into the city, like
down the street, around the corners.
Yes, and none of it had continuity because they're really looking for really great locations and scene settings of Pittsburgh. And I talk about how she's not biking, she's not living over here to go over here.
I think you said the reason she has such great legs is because she's biking all over the entire city,
all over the city,
and like the steep Pittsburgh hills.
Yes,
right.
And at one point, one of the great scenes is her going down the hill, and it's right beside the hospital, Allegheny Hospital. Yep. So you see a nurse walking up in the scene, and I tell you that's because she's right beside the hospital.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen that episode, go to our YouTube channel and look up and just search for Flashdance. Mm-hmm. But we show the movie clip, and then we show us doing that. It's either. Is it that we show the movie clip first and then we show you?
Yes, yeah.
So not only are you kind of standing in the spot where they had filmed it, but I'm trying to recreate as best I can with my amateur, equipment and technique to really recreate those shots.
It was just a dream come true for me.
It was super fun
for a girl who always loved that movie.
Yeah.
And we go to the Carnegie Museum where it's supposed to be the ballet school in the movie, and she gets intimidated filling out the application for ballet school.
She runs away.
She runs out.
Yeah.
And so I kind of recreate her running out, and she's running out of the gallery, basically, of the museum.
Yeah, and again, we try to recreate the shot. So the shot in the movie is her running kind of
on
the second floor.
And then it's like she must have to backtrack, and then she's running the same way in the same distance on the bottom floor.
Yeah.
Basically just to get a really good shot of that whole gallery.
Yeah, but we recreate all that stuff, right? You're walking down the thing. I'm trying to do it where it's the pillars are going by. I'm doing the shot statues there. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was, and even when she rides her bike up to the Carnegie Museum.
Yes, right in front. So we talk about, that's where she sees the ballet, and she's leaving with Hannah, and she sees Mick, or she sees Nick with his ex-wife.
Oh, yeah.
So she's in front of the museum there. So we talk about the front of the museum and the statues that are out there.
Yeah.
They use the Carnegie Museum for everything. That's where she does the side of the museum is where she does her dance practice.
Yeah.
Right. So they use that whole museum for a bunch of different things. But it was really fun. We go to like Hannah's house.
Yeah, which is still there. I mean, it's still like the house. It's
awesome. We
barely changed.
Yeah, there's no portico anymore, and there's no ivy on the side of the building. We ride the Duquesne incline.
That was neat.
And we talk about her riding the incline with her bicycle.
And if you're not familiar with Pittsburgh, again, let me step back and paint the picture. So the Duquesne incline, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jen, but let me see if I've actually learned something while we were out there filming. They used to use it for the coal miners, and they would transport all these materials up this super steep hill. So if you've never been to Pittsburgh or certain parts of Pennsylvania, very common for super steep hills there, which is nightmare driving in the wintertime. Super steep hills, super sharp turns. So the Duquesne incline, it was actually originally to help transport materials and equipment and this, that, and the other up this super steep hill. Yeah. And then it basically turned into a tourist attraction.
Yeah, and then people would take it home after work and things like that.
Right.
And so it was used for that as well. And so most people, Pittsburgh is on 3 rivers. It's connected. There's bridges. They call it the city of bridges because there's so many bridges that go across the rivers that kind of connect the whole city together. Yeah. So you have the Monongahela, the Allegheny, and the Ohio. And those are the 3 rivers that make up and we used to have 3 River Stadium there. Yep. And so all of that area is Pittsburgh. Yeah. All around those rivers and all around those bridges. And it's very steep and it's very hilly. And the Duquesne Incline has a beautiful view. It's where we shoot the very last scene.
At the top of it. If you ever go to visit Pittsburgh, I mean, you should go do it. It's pretty neat. It's not like some fast ride. It's very slow. Yeah. In the movie, she actually uses it and she takes her bicycle. She uses it to take her bicycle.
She's going to see Hannah.
She's ridden all over the city. All over the city, up these hills and around the corners, and she doesn't want to ride a little bit further, up the hill. But I get it.
So for a young girl to see this movie, right? Alex is supposed to be 18. She's a welder. Her dream is to be in the ballet, but she's a welder by day, and then she dances at night, and she dances in a place where it's not nudity.
Yeah, so it's not quite a strip club.
It's not quite a strip club.
It's a gentleman's club.
Yes,
we'll
but she dances. Sure. But that's kind of her way to kind of keep her dream alive.
Yeah.
To practice her love.
Dancing on stage with like the super uber famous scene with the water scene. Yeah, she drops the water on herself.
Yes, like the bucket of water on herself and dances around. And that scene, I mean, the weight of that water must have been intense.
That's a lot of water.
That's a lot of water. That's a lot of weight. But so here we have like this conflict.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. Where, not only is she doing a job that is a predominantly male job in a huge industry in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Especially then.
You can imagine the money she would be making. Now, at that age, she wouldn't be a full welder. She'd be an apprentice welder, but you would still be making a ton of money based on her age.
Yeah, you talk about that in the
based on her age, because you have to have so many years experience welding to be a master welder.
Right.
And so apprentice welder, but you're still making a ton of money. Pittsburgh is a city of steel. Yeah. There's welding everywhere. And so we go to the location where she's working and she gets the sandwich.
Yeah, her lunch break. Yeah.
And you see all the steel.
Yeah, and it was very interesting, again, kind of from a behind the scenes perspective. So that's absolutely the spot. But the building has actually been kind of added on to a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so we really had to kind of do some double takes because I was trying to recreate this shot and I couldn't quite get it to match because there's like a different building in the background now where there wasn't back then.
They built up the city.
And they've kind of added this kind of truck dock station actually onto the building where she was next to. So we do like the best job we can, but like there's just, I mean, think about it. It was filmed, in the early 80s. It was released in 1983.
Sure.
And here we are 40 years later, which is crazy. So the city's changed.
So the city's changed.
Yeah.
So and here she wants to be a dancer. She wants to be a ballet dancer. So she wants to be a classically trained ballet dancer. And the whole premise is she hasn't had any schooling.
Right.
Right. And so she meets a guy. And this is, this movie, I think, does a lot for feminism, but it also does a lot for misogyny.
It absolutely does. It's super 80s in that way.
Because here's this guy who sees her dance.
At the club.
At the club.
Yeah. He's like, oh, yeah. The one that got the water dropped
Yeah.
on.
He's like, oh, she's hot. And his friend tells him her social security number.
Oh, does he really?
And he goes, what is that? Her phone number? He goes, her social security number. She works for you. And it's like, dude, how do you have her social security number memorized? Like, are you stalking her?
I forgot about that part.
Like, you know her, you have her social security number. You can just rattle it off. So there's some issues there, right? So then he sees her the next day and he's like, I saw you dancing. And she's like, what? Like, okay. So that's kind of how they start talking. And so there's some issues.
Right. And then they start dating.
And she kind of lets him in on her dream, right? Like, I want to study ballet. It's always been my dream. And then he, being her boss of a welding industry, you can imagine he has money.
Heck yeah.
So he has connections, and this is the art and culture of Pittsburgh. So he has connections to that ballet industry. And so he tries to help her get an audition. And she loses her mind because she doesn't want help, right? She wants to do everything on her own.
Sounds like our daughter. Sounds like Madison.
She doesn't want help. She can do it by herself. She doesn't need anybody's help. She's come this far on her own. Like, you don't really get into family background, but she's independent and isolated.
Yeah.
Right. She's in Pittsburgh. She's living in a warehouse. I mean, I don't know how they can.
Yeah, that's right. She's living in
an old warehouse.
Abandoned warehouse
with
almost.
Her dog, with her pit bull dog.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they can symbolize
any more than that.
Yeah, that you're more alone and on your own than that. So she gets upset that he helped her, and because of that, she doesn't want to do the audition, right? And so he really is passionate. He is, in the end, a good guy, and he's really passionate that if you don't follow your dream, you die. And all I did was get you the audition. You've got to get into the school.
And there's part of the conflict is like she sees him with his ex-wife,
yes,
right? Because they have some business dealing or something or some prior commitment.
On that ballet committee together because she sees him at the ballet,
right? And so he wasn't doing anything bad. No, he was just literally there with his ex-wife.
So she's of course jealous, and she doesn't want to be taken for a fool,
right?
And then she has a best friend who is also following her dream of being in the ice capades.
That's right.
And she falls.
Yep.
And doesn't get into the ice capades, and she basically throws everything away and starts working at the strip club.
And then doesn't she kind of encourage? Then from there, she encourages her like, "Hey, you need to follow your dream, do your thing."
Well, she gets her friend out of the strip club, and she realizes how far her friend has lost her focus.
Yeah, because
she's lost her chance, and so I think she sees all of that.
Yeah,
and goes for the audition. And what I love about the audition. It's, first of all, the audition's filmed in LA, not even filmed in Pittsburgh. So we couldn't find that.
There's big chunks. If you look it up, so actually this one wasn't as difficult to research for locations because there's a website that does a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
And we were able to find a good portion of them. Some of them we kind of had to do some hunting.
Yes, because Nick's house is in LA.
Yep.
Where she dances is in LA. It's actually like a Bob Hope center because if you look on the wall, there's all these pictures of service members.
Yeah.
And it's actually a USO Bob Hope center that she dances at.
Yeah.
And I think her warehouse place is actually in LA. Like, so a couple of these places they actually filmed. And the bar, I'm pretty sure is not in Pittsburgh either. So a couple of these places are not local. But one of the cool things, and of course, is the dance.
Yeah.
Right. So at the very end of the song, and I think the song was nominated for the Oscar. I think it wins the Oscar. What a Feeling.
Yeah. I think so.
I think that song and Maniac were both nominated.
Yes. That's right.
What a Feeling wins.
Right.
But so she dances at the end, and of course you're watching this girl who has had no training whatsoever rock this dance, and then when you come to find out, it's actually four people do this dance.
4 including her. Yeah.
Do this dance. So here's a person who's pretending to not have any dance And actually, so it's the dancer who does all the dancing,
Right, the professional
the
dancer.
professional, who her face is kind of skewed in most things because Jennifer Beal is not a dancer. So there's a woman who does all of her dancing, and then there's a gymnast. So they have a gymnast do the leap.
Yeah.
She has
like
a
this
beautiful, perfect,
super famous
leap.
shot.
So it's just a gymnast for that one shot.
Yep.
And then you have a break dancer,
Right.
who's actually a guy.
Yeah.
Who's doing the break dance move. And then you have some Jennifer Beal. Yeah. So you have 4 people creating this one dance of a person who's never taken dance in their life.
Yeah, that was great. And one of the things about this movie too, as I was editing it and things like that, was all the different kind of fashion that came out of this. So the fashion with there's the movie. If you Google Flashdance, if you've never seen it, after you're done listening to this podcast, go watch it.
Google it because I can just the off the shoulder.
Yeah.
The holes in the jeans.
That's from her.
That's all from Flashdance.
And didn't she kind of do some of that herself?
So she claims that she cut the hole. So basically she said she couldn't fit her head in her sweatshirt. It was too small. So she cut the hole.
And they just kind of went with
and
it.
it hung off her shoulder.
Yeah.
And they just kind of went with that.
And that's the cover of the movie.
Yeah, and she wears the ratted jeans.
Yeah.
And this changes fashion for the 80s. Like
that, and then she did the leggings, leg warmers.
The warm-up leggings, yes,
the leg warmers.
yes, with like the leotard.
She wore those from the calf down.
Yes.
Like, it's just so great.
So much fashion influence from this movie. And you might think, well, no, that was 80s. No, that was Flashdance.
Yeah.
Like, people think that the chicken came before the egg, or no, Flashdance came and then fashion caught up with it.
Yeah.
It was like this whole kind of dance, jazzercise, aerobic after Flashdance with the leg warmers and all that stuff. But the cutting off of the sweatshirts hanging off your shoulder, the holes in your jeans, that's all Flashdance influence.
Yeah.
So,
it was really cool, just kind of doing finding pictures and finding the shots and all this stuff, and just there's so many classic scenes and classic shots in this movie.
And classic songs. People still recreate the water on you still see that today recreate, or Maniac, people trying to
Chris Farley, for my guy listeners out there, Chris Farley in what is it, Tommy Boy?
Yes.
Right? So it's famous more than just outside of the 80s.
Yes, and it's so you get that it's the 3rd highest grossing film of the 80s. So it's having this of 83.
Yeah.
So it's having this influence on people, but the story of Alex is supposed to be based on a real character. I think I told you about this.
That was very interesting.
So her name was Maureen Martyr, and she was a construction worker welder in Toronto.
Yeah.
And she danced at night. So just like Alex, right? And she sells her story for $2,300.
Yeah.
Somebody in Hollywood, Universal, I don't remember, wants to just kind of pitch the story. So she sells it for $2,300. So then when it's the 3rd highest grossing movie of 83, she tries to come back and get reimbursed, like some back end money, right? And takes them to court and everything, and the court finds no, your $2,300 is all
away.
That's all you're entitled
you signed
to.
it away. That's why you got to read that fine print.
Yeah, I mean, it grossed over $200 million.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
$200 million, and so the court told her sorry. I mean, and I don't even think they gave her even a kickback just to be nice.
Probably not. I mean, legally they don't have to, right? That's that's business, right? That's if you sign it away, and it could have never made it into a movie at all, and she would have made $2,300, but it did, and it became an enormously influential and popular movie.
Sure, and so we talk about its influences on feminism.
Yes.
So I talk a lot about the bicycle.
Yeah.
Right? Because Susan B. Anthony was very adamant about women learning how to bicycle. She wanted the bicycle to be the symbol of the feminist movement. And she wanted that because it showed women having real independence in their transportation.
Yep.
Because at the time, women were very much, you just had to be whatever.
You're reliant.
Yeah, you're reliant on
your husband or your significant other
family,
or whatever. Yeah.
Whatever they had for a carriage or maybe a trolley, So it wasn't like you're reliant on mass transportation.
Yeah.
You don't have your own individual
It
transportation.
was very symbolic,
Yes.
right? The bicycle kind of became the symbol. I mean, they're like when I was looking up pictures
Yeah.
of kind of the women's rights movements and stuff like that, they're posing there with their bicycles.
Yeah, so it's so evident in the movie. Another symbolism. She's bicycling everywhere in this movie. She doesn't have a car. She could easily afford a car. She's a welder.
She's a welder. She was making
in 1980s.
She's actually making really good money.
In Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She could buy a car, but she's not. She's using her 10-speed from her dance studio at night in the rain.
Yep.
Right? At one point, Nick is following her in his Porsche as she's bicycling home in the rain. So they make a point to really show this symbol.
Yeah,
of
that
her
she's independent. They drive that. That's if there's one theme that they're driving through this, right? It's being independent and for her following her dreams.
Yes, following her dreams. So that's the whole momentum here is that the huge influence in pop culture is following your dreams. Maybe sometimes you do need help from other people. It's okay to take the help from other people.
Yeah, the story of struggle.
Yes, we all need help every now and then. That's okay. You can still make your dreams come true. And, that you need people to believe in you in the end. But I think the biggest thing is like opportunity when it meets preparation equals success.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of what it was trying to show there. Like she's still doing it on her own because she was prepared for that moment.
Right.
She had the opportunity. She got the opportunity from help, but her preparation led to her success. So I think that was the huge message that they were trying to get across, especially for women in the early 80s. You can do it.
Yeah.
Make sure you're prepared for when opportunity presents itself to you.
Yeah. And there was one other thing before we finish up that I want to talk about that I thought was really neat. And that was the crossing guard.
Oh, yeah. So we go there.
The crossing guard. What was his? Do you remember his name?
Vic Sianka.
That's right. And so I actually was able to find like original old footage on YouTube of Vic Sianka.
He did it for 30 years.
He did it. So, and if you haven't seen the movie, finish this podcast, then go watch the movie. Yeah. If you have seen the movie, if you remember when she's crossing the street with her friend and they're kind of being playful being playful with this crossing guard he's got very big arm movements and you can tell gloves. He's got white gloves and he's having fun with it, right? He was kind of a little bit of a character.
Sure.
But I didn't realize like he was a Pittsburgh staple.
Yes, for 30 years he did that because you can imagine the traffic at rush hour.
Yeah.
And he directed traffic for 30 years, getting people in and out of the city.
Now, that location was actually difficult to find.
Very difficult because things had changed so
much.
We
were pretty sure we found the right spot where we were filming. Someone, I think, came back to us later and said, hey, no, he actually used to stand over here. That's where the shot is.
We're at 537th Avenue. We're right by the Benedum Theater.
Yeah.
Wood and Liberty. Like, we're right there, but I think the person said maybe it was at Wood and Liberty.
Yeah.
So we're close by. I think we're like one street
again,
over.
Things have changed. Bridges have been updated and stuff like that, right, since the early 80s. But that was just such kind of a neat little tribute to Pittsburgh history.
Yes, and he was in the Navy, so we say go
That's
Navy.
That's right. He was a Navy guy. And little things like that are, for me, always kind of like a real pleasant surprise because here's this neat piece of history, this neat character. He wasn't seeking fame, right? He was just serving his community. He was a police officer. He was directing traffic. And here he is. And now he's featured in a movie. Yes. And he was well known before that.
Yes.
Right? And now here he is cemented in another classic. That's a classic scene. It's not a big scene. It doesn't really contribute too much to the story other than she's just having fun around Pittsburgh. And here's this crossing guard. They're being playful and he's being playful right back. Yeah. That was just, to me, that was just like something that I took a lot of joy out of.
Yeah. Just like it shows you very community oriented.
Yeah.
Pittsburgh is just, loves its people.
Yeah. And he's got like classic 80s mustache. Oh man, he's got like Tom Selleck mustache all day, and he's pulling it off like a champ. Vic Sianka. It was that was just a ton of fun for me. Like that little piece, I just got a ton of enjoyment out of.
I loved filming this one. I just loved being in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
It was fun. It was fun driving around Pittsburgh, and again, it's just such a fun movie. So again, if you haven't ever seen the movie, or you haven't seen our video, stop listening to this podcast once you're done. Go watch our video, then go watch the movie. Because it's just such a blast. It's a classic 80s movie, and filming it and driving around Pittsburgh was a ton of fun. So Flashdance was not only a great movie that showed how women and their independence were on the rise, shifting out of that era of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, but some of the underlying messages of women's rights and feminism, while not giving up what makes them unique as a woman, is what Flashdance is truly about. That, and that a Steel Town girl can still love a guy that loves her enough to not let her dreams die. So thank you again for listening to the Talk with History podcast, and please reach out to us at our website, talkwithhistory.com. But more importantly, if you know someone else that might enjoy this podcast, any 80s fans out there, please share this with them, especially if you think today's topic would interest a friend. Shoot them a text and tell them to look up the Talk with History podcast, because we rely on you, our community, to grow, and we appreciate you all every day.
And thank you, Scott, for loving the Steel Town girl enough to not let her dreams die.
We'll talk to you next time.